Okay, so today we are doing this session of Candid Cinematography Adda, and today we are doing it as the topic art history, science, and technology. So it is like, generally people don't talk about art history, science, and technology, all these things together. So, what we are going to do is we are going to talk about it together. Uh, Physics, math, engineering, we can talk about, and this. You have to understand that we are doing a separate playlist where we are talking about the scientific aspects. For example, if I talk about the physics part of light, then you will understand I can talk about few laws, but at a very basic level, what we can talk about is reflection. The light is coming from the reflection. There is a surface, it is getting reflected, and we have the reflected ray. So incident and reflected ray, and the angle in between, how you are playing with that. Refraction, there is one thing you can understand, especially if you are having water, glass, air, and light is going through the medium, you will understand how things are changing. Suppose you are taking a shot of an object which is underwater, you will see reflection in place. So these things will happen, and we will talk about it in that playlist. Diffusion we are using because whenever you are having a diffuser, soft box and all these things, but ultimately what are you getting in terms of aesthetics, in terms of the basic language, what we get? You have a hard light, you have a soft light. Now, how you have a hard light and what are the techniques you are using that it is becoming a soft light, and the range in between, how hard it is, how soft it is, the light, how diffused it is, and how much do you need, because the shadows it will cast, and depending on that, form, structure, shape. So we will talk about visual hierarchy today too. Whenever you are making a composition, we will talk about visual hierarchy. That's a very important thing, or often people don't talk about. And we have highlights, we have shadows, we have midtones. Now, if I talk about the highlights, specular highlights or highlights, the shadow, you will see subjective jodi ami dekhi, you will have a lot of scope of experimentation, And if I talk about the midtone, you will see objectivity. So how you are playing with that subjectivity and objectivity, and how you are playing with perspectives, with the objectivity and the subjectivity of the camera. So many ways we can tell a story. The thing is, we have a lot of options, and when we have a lot of options, we can get confused. But if you know what you are requiring from your movie, you have the visual appeal, you have the color palette, you have your vision, the director is very sure about what he or she wants. There is a lot of sketch work, previs, storyboard, whatever you want to call it. In pre-production, you have done your short list, you have done your work. So somehow you know that what is the thing you are looking for, then you are free to improvise. That is how we do things, Sometimes you are very meticulous about the things in the pre-production itself. So whenever you are going to shoot, you have everything carefully planned. Then accordingly you are shooting. But life is giving you a lot of options too. You are free to explore. So whenever you are going to the shoot, you will see many things are happening, and according to those happy accidents or those surprises or those great things that are happening, impromptu things are happening, you are doing improvisation. And not only you as a cinematographer, the actors, they form a relationship with the cinematographer, they form a relationship with the camera. You're doing staging and blocking, and they can improvise on the spot. Can I use this dialogue? Can I say this line in this way? They will come up with those things as well. So an actor can have a good relationship with the camera. Some actors do have that, and some actors don't have that. They are more dependent on the instructions from the director. Obviously everyone is, But some people are just focusing on their own physical apparatus, their voice, how they can offer their performances, and the camera is doing its job. The cinematographer is someone they are trusting. The director and the cinematographer, they will do their job, you know. So as a human being, as an actor, as an artist, as a performer, what can I bring to the table? They are focusing on that. And some people are very much aware of the process, you know, this person is lighting, this person is shooting, this person is doing the focus pulling, this person is operating the camera, and these things are happening around us. If you are in if you are in the set, you will see that so many things are happening, because often when you look at the movie, when you look at the theater screen, when you just look at the story getting unfold, you know, you don't think about all these things. Often I am talking about in layman terms, people don't think about much how this thing happened, how that thing happened. They are just looking at the story, they are looking at the emotions, they are looking at the performances, they are looking at the actors doing something, something is happening, and they are just interested about that, you know. But you will understand that these things are happening around you, so you are forming a relationship with those things as well, and how it is shaping your performance, how you are enhancing your performance based on those things. So those things are really important. So you can do that. And few things I want to mention, you know, if I talk about the science and the technology aspects, you will see that there is CMOS sensor, solid state devices you are using, then CCD, CMOS sensors, your lenses, different kinds of lenses. It can be anamorphic or some other kind of lens you want to use. Maybe you are requiring something special to shoot a particular situation, so for all those situations you are doing that. Accessories, you know, if I talk about accessories while shooting a movie, you will understand there too you are using the science and technology and all these things. But if I talk about one accessory, for example, if I talk about the filters only, you will understand you are using the accessory. If I talk about the science, you know, polarization, haze, UV filters, neutral density filters, then your polarizers, you will understand why you are going for that filter. There is a scientific reason. Light is coming from this direction, these things are happening, you understand that. But aesthetically it is doing something. Suppose you have a problem to solve, and the filter is helping you to solve the problem. Where sometimes when you are taking a picture of the waterfall, the neutral density filter, if I am talking about a still shot, when you are taking the picture of a waterfall, you will see that a neutral density filter will help you. How it is helping you? Then you will come to the aperture, shutter speed, ISO, and you will understand this f-stops, how you are playing with f-stops. 1/3, 2/3, you know, you can see all these things in any camera nowadays. But f-stops, what they are supposed to do, and the depth of field the f-stops are providing. You know, I can tell you, this is f2.8, this is f3.5, this is f8. Now it requires a lot of effort. Initially you might do a lot of mistakes, but gradually you will learn and you will have an eye for that. And you obviously know, by far we have talked about this, that as you are going to this range, you know, f8, f11, so on and so forth, you are actually having less light. Now how you are balancing that with the shutter speed and the ISO and all the other things? So for that, scientifically, those accessories are supposed to do something. I'm talking about only filter, but there are other things as well. But aesthetically you have a look. So what I'm going to mention is, because I have seen some situations and I can understand where they're coming from. This is supposed to do this. But if it is not solving a particular cinematic problem, then you are just using it for the sake of telling someone that you are using that filter. It is supposed to help the storytelling. It is supposed to solve a problem. So if you have a shot where you are taking a picture of the water and you want to play with the reflection a bit, you are using a polarizer filter. Then you are solving a problem, and by shooting in this way, you are taking a cinematic decision as well, a creative decision. And that is helping the storytelling, or it is getting in the way of storytelling. Sometimes it can be a very creative use, you know, you want to capture a particular thing and the interplay with the water, when you are doing that, maybe something is obstructing you and you want to capture this in this way. You are using a filter. It is a creative use. Then when people are observing it on screen, in the big screen, they are just looking at the thing. Something is happening, an event, a plot point, emotions from an actor. But how you achieve that, there is a lot that goes behind, That's why we are talking about science, technology, and art history. Why I mentioned it? Obviously, it is very evident by now if you have gone through all the sessions or all the discussions or any discussion you have gone through. You will see that light and shadow, we are talking about it. Writing with light, painting with light, lighting, shadow, and I just mentioned, highlights, shadow, midtones. So the more you understand that, the more you know how to play with the f-stop, how to play with the contrast, how to play with the texture, how to play with this form and structure. Then you have the components or the elements of the photograph, and you have the visual hierarchy. And you will understand geometry, how geometry, ratio, and all these things are helping you. Again, math. So I have figured out the elements of visual arts when I am talking about. You have a structural aspect. If I talk about visual hierarchy, if I talk about lines and shapes and this geometry, this mass, visual importance, your this form, contour, and all these things, you have a structural aspect. You are having a structural aspect where you are looking at the structure, form, shadows, and all these things. You are playing with light. And then you have the psychological aspect. And if I talk about psychology as a science, then that is also a big scientific part. How you are lighting something, how you are having the texture, how you are telling the story in a particular way, that is having a big psychological impact on the audience. And the more creative decisions, the more you are aware of those creative decisions, and you are playing with creativity, but that is helping the story psychologically, that is helping the audience psychologically. Understand? So that there is a big science, sociological aspects, psychological aspects, and all these things are happening. What happens, I have figured out, when you don't do too much analysis, what you do is, we are just doing things because we feel like doing it. We have watched a lot of movies. We have gathered a sense of lighting. We have gathered a sense of cinematography. That's why we don't need to do a lot of analysis. And sometimes those analysis, sessions of analysis, they are literally very boring, So you will see that when you are analyzing each and everything, it can be very boring thing. And it can take you away from the story as well. Sometimes you are doing things based on your feeling, and you will see a greater importance of that gradually. But talking about the structural aspect and the psychological aspect, sometimes when you know things, you can play with things a lot. So structural aspect, visual hierarchy, you can play with that, and you can direct the eye of the viewer in a certain way so that they are looking at a particular point on the screen because you want them to look at in this particular point, and that is how you are shaping the cinematic language too. So these things are important. I wanted to mention that. And lighting setup, you can shoot in available light, you can shoot in a studio in a 3-point lighting setup, and then you can add additional lights. What kind of lights you are adding, how many lights you are having, what are they supposed to do, these things So then accordingly you will take the decision. Emotional content. Whenever you are having emotional content, you have to understand the actors are giving something emotional, that is having an emotional content. But when the way you are crafting your image, the way you are shaping your image, the way you are composing, the way you are moving the camera, those things are having psychological impacts as well, emotional content as well. The image is having emotional content too, So these things are important. And canvas. If I talk about a painter, for a painter, he or she has a canvas. Painters used to have a canvas or something else on which they used to paint, but you have, if I talk about only one thing, you have a canvas for a painter. Then you have a frame for a cinematographer, and how you are shooting it like you are focusing on the frame and how you are composing the frame. Then you have 24 frames per second, or you have a 30 frames per second depending on the scenario. Maybe you are having 60 frames per second. So accordingly, how the speed you are looking at, there is a things are fast because you are shooting with this setting. Things are a bit slower because you are shooting in this way. So 24 fps used to be a norm, but people have played with other frame rates as well. So, but it helps in editing. Sometimes you will see that when you are looking at frames and frames per second, and when you are taking a frame out, it will have some jumps, it will have some motion in the picture. So they can add something creatively to the movie, or they can take people away from the storytelling or the viewing experience. So then you can look at the creative decisions. You are faced with a problem and you are solving that problem, and you will take your creative decisions accordingly. But initially, again I will mention, initially in the early days or in the old days, people used to have a lot of problems. But the enthusiasm or the passion to tell a story, it was so huge, it surpassed each and every challenge. It surpassed each and every circumstance. It surpassed each and every problem. So to solve the problem and to go beyond it, that was the enthusiasm. So all these problems were there, but people also figured out many creative solutions. But nowadays, when you see that people have become a bit lazier in many instances, they can solve the problem in so many different ways. They have a lot of alternatives, but they think whether they should go for this, because we have a lot of options. You have so many things, technological improvements, evolution of camera itself. I have talked about the size of the camera. Initially they used to be huge. Now you can carry a camera in a pocket. But are you shooting with that enthusiasm? That is very important. Are you editing with that enthusiasm? Are you keeping all these things, the passion of storytelling all the time? So when you don't have that, you have a camera, you are taking pride in using this camera, that camera, but what it is supposed to do, how you are telling the story. So that's why today we have a lot of options. Today we have a lot of progress in technology, but the storytelling, with that technological progress, we can tell things in different ways, in creative ways, in so many other ways, so we can incorporate that in our storytelling or in our films. Green screen, color grading, we will talk about digital intermediate, color grading, and we will talk about animation. And I have already talked about animation. When you are talking about animation, you are starting something from scratch. You are creating something from scratch. Some people will call it a difficult process. Some people are naturally inclined towards this kind of processes. They are doing each and everything. Initially, it used to be like, if you look at Hayao Miyazaki's movies, he used to sketch everything. So there were these people, and you have Pixar, who brought this computer animation and without compromising the storytelling aspects or the emotional appeal or the human aspects. So you have all these options: Disney, Pixar, then we have other studios, especially Hayao Miyazaki's movies. When you talk about all these movies, you will see that different ways of doing animation, but you are actually creating something from scratch. Sometimes many actors will give their voices, but the visuals you are seeing, the visuals you are creating from scratch. But when you are shooting something, you can do it in different ways. You have a green screen, and maybe one actor is talking to the green screen, and then you are replacing the green screen with an alien, with something else. So the actor at that moment is taking the direction or performing, giving the performance, acting with respect to the green screen. But it is considered that that will be replaced with an alien or something else. So you can practice that as an acting exercise. You have motion capture. So actors acting, that is one scenario. Normally you do that, you have a camera, there are people talking, one person talking, in a situation, society, there are many people, you are just taking your camera, you are shooting, that is one thing. You have the motion capture, and there in the first thing you have the set, you have the actors are there, interaction between the actors, interaction between people, among people. Then you have the motion capture, there are things, and computer generated things are there, so it is capturing your motion, capturing your emotion and all these things, and you are acting based on that, because you know that you are not in that situation, rather there are things that is capturing your motion. But when people are looking at the outcome, when people are looking at the final product, they are looking as if you are interacting with this person, that object, that alien, or this and that, and all these things. So that is there. Green screen, blue screen, something similar. Green screen, blue screen, for your requirement you are doing that and you are acting accordingly. Sometimes you are using both, you have a set and you have a green screen. So maybe a particular part of that composition or that frame you are replacing with something else, and you are shooting with green screen. Gradually in the post production you are replacing it with something else, but you still have few actors in place. So there are different situations. Initial days, if you look at Alfred Hitchcock's movies and others movies, it used to be rear projection. You are driving a car, there was a process called rear projection. So these things were there. How we have evolved from that to this. Then stereoscopic camera, James Cameron is doing fabulous job for years, for this 3D experience and this stereoscopic camera and all these things. Then I talked about the aspect ratios, 1.66, 1.85, cinema scope, whatever you are going for. But there is a creative decision you are taking, how it is helping the storytelling. These things are important, and there is science too. Now image emotion I already talked about. So light is giving you a lot of information. Now people will talk about, when you are shooting with a camera, science, tech and aesthetics, you will look at a painting, suppose Vermeer, a Rembrandt, or people from Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood or Renaissance period. You will look at a painting and you will see a lot of light and shadow, form, structures, objectivity, subjectivity, contour, and portraits or landscape, whatever you want to see. You will have a lot of paintings. Let's consider portraits. So you will have all those things, and if you take a picture of that, you will understand, are you being authentic while taking the picture? Because depending on the calibration, you will see that the colors are changing. The painting was created in this way. Now how you are capturing the authenticity of the painting while you are taking a picture. Then when you are lighting things in a set, you are having those actors and you are having the picture taken. Maybe it's an 8K camera, but you cannot show it to people. So you have to, from the 8K, you may have to shift it to 4K or maybe 2K or maybe 1080p, depending on the circumstance. So you are losing a lot of information too. Some people prefer to shoot in film. There are reasons behind that. I have already discussed. In digital, you have all those choices, how you are doing. So gradually we will have projections for 8K, 4K, 6K. In some places there is, I think, for few 4K, I think they have. So, but in India, if I talk about India, we don't have, in India, you people, you will see that you have to, you may use a 6K or 8K camera, and then you have to lose a lot of information to show it on screen. So these things are there. So film stocks used to be the thing, emulsions, film stock, and then we have our digital intermediate color grading, Da Vinci Resolve, what Da Vinci people are using to color grade. But you are doing the color grading based on what? So when you talk about art history, you will see that we are looking at the painting, we are looking at the tones, we are looking at the textures, we are looking at the color, we are looking at the light and shadow, and we are having a feel of the painting. When you are doing the color grading, you are taking a lot of inspiration from art history. You are going through all these painters and subconsciously you are getting influenced by those painters, and you want to have a particular color palette for your film, you want to shoot your film in a particular way, then when you are doing your color grading, you have all those choices, creative choices. So you are aware of that as well, you know. And sometimes, I have mentioned it many times, it is like the performance you are giving, it is like a dance with the camera, a relationship between the camera and the actor and other people. So it is like a dance, and the lenses you are using, the settings you are using, the different ways. You can use a telephoto lens, you can use a wide lens, you can use a 50mm, you can use different lenses, and how you are playing with those lenses, how you are moving the camera, whether you are using a crane where you have a lot of space, height, space and all these things, where you are using a steady cam, you are carrying the camera and you are having a movement, and you are using the shoulder rig, it is having a particular kind of movement. And then I say the pan, when you are doing it is like this pan. So this is the camera, when you are doing the pan, this is the pan. So the camera is there and it is like moving like this. This is the pan, and when you are actually moving, this is the sideway movement. This is the thing you can do. Then dolly forward, dolly backward. There's so many things you can do. But if you look at the camera in a basic terminology, you're moving the camera, and there are jerks. How you are going to do that? How many jerk you are going to allow? How much jerk you are going to allow? This jerky movement or this shaky movement, how much you are going to allow? Now you have a lot of AI technology, and you have a lot of things. You can do image stabilization. So even if you have a lot of shaky movements while shooting it, later you can remove a lot of things. But some people don't want to go for that post-production for special effects. They want to shoot everything in a proper way. So for that reason, you have to take those creative choices, how you are using those things, And it is always good to shoot in a better way. And then if you can add something in the post-production, then you can do that. If you are shooting mostly based on this post-production, sometimes when you are not aware of the acting, how it is getting affected by the acting, or how it is affecting the acting, then it can be problematic. So you could have had better performances, but because of that lack of decision making, maybe you missed out some acting performances, or maybe you could have taken more takes to get a better acting performance, but you didn't call for that. So those things are intrinsically part of this filmmaking process. So cinematic language is important. You can shoot with any camera, even with the phone, as I keep mentioning, but that thing you need, you have to make a movie, you have to understand the cinematic language. So these things. So I wanted to mention one thing, maybe in the next session I will do that. We started with a pinhole camera, and how you are having this image, the reverse image, and this lens and the light and the arrow. I can have a board and I can show you how it was happening. Then camera obscura, and then the pinhole camera, and gradually now we have great cameras in our phones. In many handheld devices we have a lot of camera. But you had this 8mm, 16mm, 35mm, and to have those cameras to shoot those 8mm, 16mm, it used to be a big thing. I know, as I keep mentioning, I had a very early digital camera. So when I was shooting with those cameras, at that time I think 4 megapixel or 5 megapixel, around that. But the way I was playing with the camera, it meant a lot. It meant a lot. So you make your mistakes, you learn from that. There are many rules, one of them being the 10,000 hours rule. You are taking 10,000 pictures, or maybe you are working for 10,000 hours, then you become good at something. Really true. Mostly it is true, but sometimes you are having that feeling, you are starting in a really great way. So what I will suggest is, don't be afraid to make those mistakes. You can make those mistakes. Digital is giving you a lot of opportunities to make a lot of mistakes. If you are in a film school, you can make a lot of mistakes. But when you are going to the actual field, actual professional arena, so you can play with the creative choices, And films used to be costly, as I have mentioned. But with digital you can do so much. You can mix film and digital, and you can understand both of the things, so ultimately it's the screen on the ultimately it is the image on the screen in the theater, and how audience is getting that emotionally, entertainment wise. So you have to understand that, and you are making them happy, you are making them cry, you are making them laugh. But since we are talking about the educational part of camera, so science, art history, what is the reason I choose to do this session today is there is a thing that if you belong to a scientific background, you cannot do art history. If you belong to the art history background, you cannot do scientific, and all these things are there in India. So that is bullshit, utter bullshit. What you can do is you can come from the scientific background and you can really study the masters or the great painters, and you can go through art history and you can incorporate both the things, and you can if you have been an engineer, if you have been a science guy, you can contribute a lot, technically, technologically, aesthetically, learning from all those things. You can add so much, you can add a lot of value to that. Art history will always help you to shoot better pictures. It has helped me, it has helped many people, and you can learn so much. How the great masters played with light, how they played with form, how they played with different things, different elements of a painting, and how the evolution of these movements, different movements, how it happened, why it happened. There was a reason behind that, why this particular painter chose to paint in this particular way. When you go through all these things, you are a well aware person, intellectually stimulated. You can hold great conversations with great people, you can guide them in a better way, you can do things in a much more creative way. So it is always very beneficial to go through art history. And when you are having the science and tech background too, or you have gone through your own research, or maybe you are having someone who can advise you in the science and technical area, technological area, then you can do so much, because you are not compromising the storytelling. You want to achieve something in for the requirement of the storytelling, then you have all these things. You are taking your knowledge and wisdom from art history, you are taking your knowledge and wisdom from science, physics, math, engineering, and all these things, applied knowledge. Then you are making things happen. Because ultimately, again, it is the image on the screen, it is the performances people are looking at. But so many things are happening behind the scenes. So you should respect that. Now, monitor camera actors, I have talked about in many ways, and today I will mention just once again. As a director or as a cinematographer, you have to stay with the camera, but as a director, you can be near the actors, you can be near the monitor. It can be far away from the camera, or it can be near the camera depending on the situation. You can stay near the camera and just look at it. You can operate the camera yourself. So you can be near the monitor, you can operate the camera, you can stay near the camera, you can stay near the actors. Particular choice. You can do all of them depending on the situation, So he or she is doing it like that, I have to do it like that, or how should I do it? Initially, you may go through all these situations, because how I am going to direct, you are figuring out, you are still seeking, you are figuring out how I am going to do that. This is supposed to be in this way, I should do it in this way. Those things are there. But as you are working for a long time, as you have made a lot of mistakes, as you have made a lot of great things as well, so you can guide people in a better way, and you will see that we can do all of them. We can do all of them. This scene required I had to stay near the actors so that I could feel the energy, I could guide them in a better way. And when I stayed near the monitor, it has its own thing. So just go for the storytelling first and foremost, and all these things will happen. You will figure out a way, But storytelling, you should not compromise the storytelling, because ultimately it is going to be storytelling, emotional arc, and the emotions, So that is very important. So yeah, I mean, that's more like it. Analog and digital, photons, electrons, electromagnetic waves. We will talk about that in another session, in the science session. So today I tried to give you a brief idea about how these things are connected. So far we have discussed all these things. From the next session onwards, we'll again go for the lives, and I will show you pictures, I will show you examples. But before that, you go through these sessions and you can suggest your things, you can give me your feedback, you can give me your your criticism. Most importantly, constructive criticism. I will love to listen to that. Sometimes I know where I am making the mistakes, but sometimes when it is coming from you, I will love to listen to that. And we can do all these mistakes, we can make all these mistakes, but ultimately when our focus is on the storytelling, to have great performances, to direct the actors in such a way that they can give great performances, they can come up with something. When we are making that environment, when you are creating the environment for great people, your cast and crew, we will obviously make great things happen. I mean, that is not something separate, that is not something different. When we do all these things, obviously we will come up with a great film, right? So I think we should focus on that. And thank you so much for being with us.